All right, guys, welcome back. Now, the last time when I left, I told you I was getting ready to glue up all my panels, and I did. Now, right here in front, you can see where I glued up my shelf. Now, this is to get the 2 out of, and of course, this is to get 1 out of. And the one thing you're going to notice on that one is, and if you look behind me right here, is this is my side panel, or one of them. And you see the glues kind of running. Well, that's the bottom of it. But I do try to keep the top of it clean a little bit. I'll take a damp rag and just kind of wipe off my glue as I go. And if I've got a little spot under a clamp like this, then I'll just take a little scraper and knock it off. Now, I told you I always glue up heavy. And when I left, last time we talked, I was telling you that if you know, I'm fortunate. In the back, I've got a big 36-inch Performax. So I can take and put all of these panels through, no issue. And I have a 2244 drum sander. Now, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I'm going to tell you this, okay? You've heard me say it 100 times. I know they're expensive. But of any single tool that I have ever owned, a drum sander probably did more for my woodworking than any other tool I've ever owned. That's just the truth. Being able to take panels and glue them up heavy and put them through there, I mean, you can buy sandpaper everywhere from a 36 to a 220. But I can start out, this stuff's a strong 7/8 and I want 3/4. I can throw some 36 on there and make a pass or two on each side. My glue's gone, I'm flat, I'm level, and then I move up through my fine grits, and I can sand to such a perfection. I mean, I can do you'll see when I do a 3/4 inch dado, I mean, I can do it perfect. Now, I don't disagree. You can do the same thing with a planer. And when I left you, what I told you is that if you got a small lunchbox planer, to now come back and rip this, plane it to size, then glue it back is a good thing. And the reason for that is, number one, you only have one glue seam you have to work, instead of trying to clean up and sand by hand all of these. All right. I also was explaining to you about using a piece of paper. Now, I've got a piece of paper down here, and if you look real careful between the glue and the dirt, you can see where I took my shelf. I think you can see it. Can you see that? I took a magic marker and just drew out 2 shelves, and I cut my panels. You know, but make sure you go past a little bit. Don't try to cut it so tight. And then, of course, you know, this is a piece of masking paper, but you can, you know, a roller. You can buy craft paper at the box store, pretty reasonable. And you notice again the 1 up, 1 down on the clamps. I want to talk to you a minute about a planer. We all know what a planer. That's what snipe is. I ain't talking about hunting that bird out there with a trash can. I ain't talking about snipe hunting. If y'all don't know, never mind. A snipe is where you've got a board, and when it comes to your planer, it'll dip on one end. It'll dip it out. It's called snipe. Here's what happens, and I want you to follow this close, because I can't draw, so you're going to have to use a little imagination. If this is the bottom of your planer bed, normally you have, a lot of lunchbox planers do not have these. Bigger planers will have rollers in them. And if you read the instructions on them, they tell you to set them level or up above the bed a little bit. Here's what happens. Right here we've got a big cutter head. Right here we've got an in-feed roller and an out-feed roller. All right. What happens is when your wood starts going through here, in the initial steps, only the in-feed roller is catching it. And if you've got a long piece, that long piece of wood is hanging out here, and so it's creating a cantilever. It's trying to, the weight of it is pushing up on this. And the one by itself is typically not really good enough to hold that whole thing flat with all that weight out there. So what it does is it comes in right here, it comes in and the cutter head hits the edge of it, the end of it, then it moves on, and then the outfeed roller catches it. Once the outfeed roller has it, it's staying pretty flat, and it moves on through. And as it moves through, then there's a point at the end of it that the in-feed roller is no longer holding it down, and now it's stretched out on the other end, so what does it do? It kicks up into the cutter head. And I read out there where guys, you know, they've adjusted. If you have a set of rollers, number one, when I set my rollers, I set them dead with the top of my bed. The bottom bed, I set it right at the top. I do not elevate it. And I keep my bed well waxed. Okay? Makes my wood run smooth. Lunchbox planers, like I said, they usually don't. Make sure that your bed is level. Now, honestly, the lunchbox planers, other than the width, that they do a super job. They really, I've used them forever. And there's a reason. The big, heavier planers, you've got these big, massive springs up in here that are putting a downward pressure. And that pressure is strong enough that if you've got a board that's got a cup in it, when it goes through, that's strong enough, it'll actually mash that board flat, plane it, and spit it out the other end, steel cupped. So if you got a board that's got a cup in it, when you're planing it, go very easy and start with the crown up. And when I say go easy, because what you want to do is that board is only going to be, let me get another spot here. Told you I can't draw. That board is only going to be as good as you can get a level plane out of it. So what you want to do is go easy, so you start taking it off like this instead of mashing it flat. Typically, the lunchbox planers really don't have that much of a downward pressure. Okay, so they do pretty good. A sander has very little downward pressure and will sand a cup out in a heartbeat. It'll sand it dead flat. Okay, so keep these flush with the bed instead of elevated. Wax the bed good. And keep it waxed. Now you're going to worry about getting wax and whatever on your wood. It's not going to work off like that. And I'll tell you what else too, that Renaissance wax, yeah, it's expensive. It's real expensive. But it goes a long way, and I tell you what, it really hangs tight to some wood. Okay? Anyway, I mean, hangs tight to the metal and doesn't get on your wood. But it is expensive. But like I said, it goes a long way. Wears really well. Okay. So make sure you do that. Now here's another tip. When you're feeding the wood in, hold the back of the wood up until it gets into the second roller, which is the outfeed. As it comes out, lift it up as it exits the infeed. Give it a little help. Keep that hold it up a little bit, let it go through, After it goes through, go to the other side, hold it up a little bit. You ain't got to lift it up here, just give it a little bit of elevation. And you'll find that you come out a whole lot better. Now, the other thing I do, if I'm going to be planing, is I try my best to leave my wood long enough so that if I get a little snipe, it's going to get cut away. I know, it seems like you're wasting wood, but it's either that or you're going to have some mess you got to try to sand out. You've got a different thickness in your board, and common sense says it's going to, the time it's going to try to take you and the frustration to try to fix that or deal with it, what little bit of wood you're going to waste leaving it long enough to get past the snipe, it's not worth the aggravation. It's just not. Now, the other thing is a lot of guys, I've got a 6-inch helical head, an 8-inch helical head joiner here. Nice long bed. But I didn't always have one. You can believe that. So I want to show you how I dealt with getting nice glue joints without a joiner. If you do have a joiner, almost every piece of wood will have a little bit of a wane to it. Means it looks a little bit like this. Down the long way. So what you got to do is you got to create a straight surface through here in order to get a straight side to work from. If you're joining, and in the technique I'm going to show you, and I've showed you this before, you always want to work off of your 2 outer points. Trying to even get it straight through the joiner on the curve right here, if you rock the least little bit, the joiner will track that curve and you can just keep going and never get it straight. But the joiner will take this point off, this point off, this point off, this point off, and you keep listening and you'll hear it catch the center. At that point, you should have a straight board. But you don't always have a joiner. Okay, I'm going to show you a little jig. And the reason I'm going to show you this to you now is we're going to use this in this corner cabinet a lot. This is as simple as it gets. What I've got is a piece of wood that I milled straight as I could get it. And then I've got another one set into it, kind of making a T. But if you notice, this piece of wood, it's not even. In other words, I've got it, I don't have the top of the T set into the center. I've actually got it offset. And here's the reason. This is going to be a straight line jig. And the reason I do that is because depending upon what I'm doing as to how thick I want it to be, how much space I want in here. And I'm going to show you this. If I set it like this, what I've got is I've got more space under here, thicker wood, common sense, thinner wood. Then I can actually, and you see the hole was drilled in it, that's just so I can clamp it to the fence. And then I can actually turn it this way and use it as an auxiliary fence for my dado blade. Now, I went and got a piece. This is a piece of live sawn curly cherry. I'm going to show it to you. Now, as you can see, I don't have anywhere on this to start sawing from. Nowhere. This bottom isn't too bad, but this is, and you're going to see wood, like I said, it's got plenty of wane in it, so you got to get it out. And without a joiner, how do you do it? Yeah, you can come in with a big hand plane and start, a joiner plane and start hand planing this edge and get it straight. No doubt. I've done that more than once. But here's what I do. I have me a straight edge here. And all I did was screwed it on to this piece of wood. I want to get one straight point to work from. Now, I remember a point in time that I actually went and bought a piece of plywood and ripped down the side of it because I didn't really have any way of getting anything straight. And so I bought a piece of plywood to get me a point to start from and just use the factory edge to saw from. But I'm going to show you. So get your straight edge. Some of you have already seen this. Here's the way this works. Now I think I'm going to have to go with my wide side here. Yeah, I am. Okay. You already got it figured out, don't you? Yeah, it wasn't hard. Now here's what I'm going to do. As soon as I find some glasses. Don't have my glasses. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to have to, in this deal, I'm going to have to remove my splitter here a minute, but I'm just taking an edge off, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm going to set my saw blade where the outside edge is right at the edge of my jig. And I tell you what, we're going to be using, we're going to use this to cut those shelves. You know? I'm going to move up a little bit. About not be tall enough for that. I had to raise that blade just a little bit. That's a thick piece of wood. And here's my offall. And I have a straight edge to start cutting from. Now I can put my splitter back on and continue, because I now have a straight side to work from. Works pretty nice. And you know, you can make it just as long as you want. Really, 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 really works good. Okay. So I don't have to lug this big thing around. Now let me show you. You know the old expression in woodworking, measure twice, cut once? Well, that's good advice, there's no question. But I'm a firm believer in cutting a few more times than that. And a good saw blade. I'm running a 40-tooth combo here, and I like it a lot. That's nice. And a glue line rip, which is usually about a 24-tooth or whatever, a good one. They do a nice job. Okay. I've just got two pieces of poplar that haven't even been planed. And I jointed one side. Now I could have just as easily did what I did there to the cherry. All right, let's get a measurement here. 5 3/4. All right. I didn't cut it wide enough. Now, when you go to put your joint together, if you're not lining up perfectly, that same thing we talked about, that wane, again, next cut would be put the point to the fence. In other words, you would have a point and a point. And as you go through, and we're not talking about something great here. We're talking about a minor thing. If you're way off, you need to either recut using your straight edge, check your straight edge, or whatever. I mean, we're dead on the money now. And these are our sawn sides, I think. That's a joint. Put the sawn sides together. Yeah, there we go. Now, make sure that the blade on your saw is dead at 90 degrees. And this is another reason I like gluing up thick. Because in the event it's not, then you can actually glue. My magnet here. You can actually glue a bow into it. And what am I talking about? If that blade is not 90 degrees, let's say it's a half a degree off or something, you're actually going to be cutting like this. And if you put your mate to it, you're okay. But if you have one going this way at half a degree and one coming this way at half a degree, when you pull these together, this is going to fold up and it's going to create an arc. Okay? So alternating your boards, meaning you're sawing this side with this face up, you saw the other side with this face down, and do that throughout so that if there's a variation, okay, it's going to take care of itself. The best rule of thumb is just to make sure your blade is at 90 degrees. Dead straight. And the other thing is that, again, by gluing it up a little thick, you don't have an issue. You know, if you get a little bit, now we're not talking major, but if you get a little bit of a bow or something like that, when you process it on down, then you're going to come in dead flat. This is the honest truth. I will spend more time processing wood and make sure everything is flat, level, square in building this piece than I will in actually putting it together and building it. That's the easy part. And that's the part everybody gets real excited about and they really get anxious to do. But what you find out is that calming down, taking your time, going through one step at a time. You know, in this case, figure out what we're going to do. Then we start gluing up. You notice we haven't even talked about the face frame. We haven't even got to the tiger maple because it's not time. We got to get this carcass standing and all of that done before we even worry about that. Because if we went in, and that's the reason I don't like plans. Now I'm going to say that right up front. That's one of my biggest issues with plans. Plans, I see guys will go through and there's a cut list and a set of plans, and they'll take that cut list and go through and cut every single piece of wood. And then they find things don't fit, don't work, and there you are. Now what do you do? It's not the way you do it, guys. You start at the bottom and come up. It's just like building a house. We got to lay the foundation, and then we can finish it out. You know, when we were drawing up our sides and whatever, we were talking about the one side's now going to be 4.5, and the side, this side's in the front of the thing, the front of the face frame is going to be 2.25. Well, that's what it's supposed to be. But when we get to it, if it winds up 2 5/16 or 2 3/16, well, we'll live with it. You know, that's the way you build this stuff. You go out here and look at any solid wood, anybody building, any craftsman building. You know, you're going to see their sizes posted, and it's going to say plus or minus a lot of them. A lot of times you're going to build something working within parameters of the wood. You know, that piece of cherry I'm showing you right there is going in a great big cabinet that I'm doing. And I'm going to get about a 12-inch I'm going to get about a 12-inch clear piece of cherry out of that. That's curly cherry with no sap. But when I was designing that thing, I needed about 12.25. But the first thing I did was went and found my cherry to do my raised panels, because I knew that was going to be the biggest thing I needed. And I didn't want to do glue ups. I want one board. So now that I'm at 12, and I'm going to rip it all to make sure I got that 12. Then I'm going to come back, and my rails and stiles, I'm just going to make them just a hair bigger to compensate. I'm going to get all my questions answered before I start. That's what you do. So in this case, we're building I'm going to go back now and process my panels, get them all nice and flat and sand it. Then we're going to come back and we're going to start cutting panels and get it ready to make into a case.